My name's Steadman, born and bred in Brewarrina, and I've seen, like a lot of people have said, I've seen a lot of changes in my life. It's not, I don't consider myself to be old, and lots of things have changed. So I'll just start off with an example. After the 76 flood, I went down to where the rocks are, the fish traps, and put my hands into the river. The river by this time had receded back into its banks, but I put my hands in the river and just all these baby fish jumping out of my hands. And I thought, what an amazing thing. Seeing a dry time, then a flood, and then just to see so much life in the river. And I remember when I was a kid, our uncles used to row us down the river, and we'd sit with our hands resting over the side of the boat, right, just dragging them through the water. And you'd look into the water, it was clear, and there was all this duckweed and everything in there, natural filtering plants, and the fish were swimming in and out of them. And you think, wow, that's pretty lucky to see that. But we don't live in the old days. And these young people growing up here now, they don't live in them old days either. They're seeing the river as it is now, just as I am. So we've got to look at what's happening here. And as you guys have well seen, it's a pretty dry time. But the river's never had a problem with us, but we have a problem with the river. And this current situation is we have what we call, fish kills and all this sort of stuff. Now, fish and rivers just do what they do. Rivers have always given us water, and they've just kept giving and giving, and we just kept taking and kept taking. So what we have now is a situation where the further west you go, the less water you get. And so we have the problem. We don't seem to realise that we have a responsibility. And we have a responsibility because the river didn't come to us, we came to the river. So the responsibility is to us that we've got to look after it, do the right thing. So the river itself is a community. We're the byproduct of that community as what we call a town. No town, no city, nowhere in the world can live without water. No group of people or animals or anything can live without water. We still can't seem to grasp the immensity of that problem that we have created. And we can't seem to grasp that simple fact that we cannot live without water. We are 75% water. Every person that walks around here. And if you look at it, with these fish kills lately in the Darling, they're talking about those cods that floated to the surface. They're 50, 60 years old, those cods. Older than a lot of people. What a tragedy to see that. And so young people who grow up seeing this, they are going to think that, well, that must be the way it is. It's our responsibility to tell these young people that it's not. But get through to them the immensity of this problem we're facing here. We live here every day. We've lived here for years, and we're seeing it getting worse and worse. Now, drought is not an unnatural phenomenon. Drought is a natural thing. Happens everywhere. The problem that we've made it worse because of the lack of water flowing through the system. So when we, as people, educate and tell our young people what to expect, what to learn, how to learn, what to learn about, it's very hard to do that when you don't have your number one resource. So like here, we have the fish traps. in our river right here. It's very hard for kids to understand how the fish traps work when there's no water and there's no fish in there. We can tell them stories, but it's very hard for them to understand it. And once again, they think, well, that's just the way it is. Must have always been like this. Well, it's not. But the simple fact we have to get through to these kids also is not only the immensity of the problem, but the simple fact is we have to look after our water. Right?
So what do you think the problems are? Why have things gotten so much worse?
Well, we have a problem with water. The problem is we can't stop using the stuff. For everything. We use water for absolutely everything. Water gets used in this town every day for everyday purposes. Every day. Right? People who live on, whether they're living in the town or out on a farm or whatever, they've got to use water. Whether you've got a business, whatever you've got in the town, you've got to use water. Right? And so we just can't seem to stop using the stuff. I'm not saying stop it all the time. I'm not saying stop, don't use water anymore. All I'm saying is we can't seem to get this immensity of this problem and say to ourselves, we've got to reduce and come to some period where we've got to stop and really understand this problem here. Nobody else is going to do it for us. Nobody else is going to do it. If we don't do it...
Do you think you have complete control over your water use in this town?
No.
So what do you think the problems are in terms of the actual water supply?
There's not enough water coming down the river because the water gets extracted or used for other purposes further up the river.
And when you were a kid and you said that the water was clear and lovely and full of fish, since that time, have you seen like successive droughts having more of an impact or just less and less water?
Well, of course you see droughts. Droughts come around every now and again. So you see a drought. But after those dry times, we've seen floods. We haven't had a real flood here since the 80s. Right? And so my nan and my father and they tell me about all these floods from when they were young. And they were much bigger than the floods I saw. And I thought they were the biggest things ever. So we have this situation where we have an abundance of water temporarily, then we have a lack of water for long periods of time. Living in the driest continent, one of the driest continents in the world. But we seem to think, and we continue to seem to think, that we can go on doing exactly what we've done forever. Well, we can do that. There ain't going to be anybody around to tell the story.
What would you like to see happen to make the river healthier again?
Well, you're never going to get the river back to what it used to be, and that's not really the point either. We want to see water in the river for a start, on a regular basis. You can't have a summer flow of water, right, and then extract the end of that summer flow of water, then expect to have water come into the system at the same rate in another season. It don't work that way. That's like saying, okay, well, we'll just take the end of the winter water and we'll be right for summer. Our rivers don't work like that, never have. The other fact is that water's being extracted from this system and has been extracted from the system since the 1880s. We're in 2019 now. The problem is not a new one, but the problem is being repeated over and over and over, with worse and worse outcomes. So, for us people living here, this river's a long river. We're on one little part of it. Our river doesn't start in New South Wales, and it doesn't finish in New South Wales, but it flows right through it. So we're not only have to think about ourselves, we have to think about other people, upstream and downstream. But it's very hard to think about anybody else when you get a situation that just absolutely internalises the severity of the problem. So it becomes very insular. So a little town like this, people go, oh, shock horror. What's happening? You know? Then what we do is we turn and blame everyone else.
We've heard that some people don't think the town's water is safe to drink and other people think it's okay. In your view, do you think the town's supply of water from the river is safe to drink, or?
I don't know, I don't drink it.
What do you drink?
Bottled water.
Okay. Boiled water?
Bottled.
Ah, how long have you been doing that?
A couple of years.
A couple of years, not just in the last 6 months.
We grew up on rainwater. Our house had a rainwater tank. That's the only water we ever drank when we were growing up. You never drank river water until we went down to our old nan's place, right on the river there. But they had 44 gallon drums full of river water, you can drink it.
Yeah.
You can wash in it, you can do whatever you like, but we grew up drinking rainwater.
So why in the last few years have you just been drinking bottled water?
Well, we got rid of the rainwater tank.
Why'd you do that?
Too old, rusted.
Oh. Do you find that other folks are having trouble with their water supply in Brewarrina? Or are some people okay?
Don't know. Better ask them. I can only talk about it myself. So I just drink water out of the bottles.
Okay.
So we got a situation here with Brewarrina where we've got all this history in this river here, all this history around this town. And that's here because of this river. Like I said, the river didn't come to us, we come to the river. So we interact with our river and we create a history and a culture while we interact with that water.
And what will happen to the history and the culture if there is no water again?
Well, it becomes a very big job to try and explain that to young people.
Do you ever worry about the future of the town itself?
No, not really. Try to live here now. You're in a situation where you've got your living needs every day. And yes, you worry about the kids, right? But then you also worry about the old people too. We can't divide them up. You can't say that we are doing a better job for our history if we're not looking after our future, eh? Or vice versa. People live, they do stuff continuously.
So you're not worried about the future. Are you worried about the immediate task of having water to drink, or are you just rocking on from day to day?
Of course you're worried about the river. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the river. Simple as that. My family wouldn't be here.
So what do you think the local folks have to do or can do together to make things better for the longer term? Or can they do anything?
Well, they've got to get together. That's easier said than done. Because people, when things go bad, everybody looks for somebody to blame. And the whole irony of this is everybody blames the next closest person to them. So we all start blaming each other, or the next person down, then the next person up the river or down the river or across the river or wherever. So we all start turning on ourselves, which is very destructive. So you can't agree. So you can't then understand what the common threat is.
What is the common thread?
No water.
Sure.
Right?
So do you see your communities will come together? Do you think there's been incidences recently that will bring people together?
I'd like to think they can.
Okay.
If they can understand this common thing. This water is us, not somebody else. It's not something else. It is us. It is what we are. It is a community. We're a byproduct of that community. We've come to this river. It's kept us alive. It's kept giving and giving and giving, and we just kept taking and taking and taking. If you don't give back, the relationship goes sour, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Just like any human relationship, it goes sour. People don't get on. So what do? Well, you've got to change. got to act. You've got to think in a different way. You've got to act in a different way. Right? That's what it is. Because the thing is, what's happening in Australia, and Australia itself, has turned into a corporation with shareholders and investors. And that's a natural resource that we trade away. That's what's happened in this country. See? And so you have all corporates
What do you
who
think?
trade.
What do you think we need to do to try to rein in the corporate power then?
Well, corporate power is built on a sense of entitlement. Right? People think they're entitled to do what they like with what they want when they want to, without any thought for anybody else. A lot of people in Australia think they're entitled to do what they like, and because they're successful in their terms, that's a result of my entitlement. Nobody's entitled to anything. I'm not entitled to that river. I'd say I belong to that river because I lived here all my life, but that doesn't give me any entitlement. It gives me responsibility.
Yeah. So perhaps if we can work together and turn that around so we have a responsibility to good health for the river, we might be able to make a start.
Well, you've got to start somewhere,
We do.
and if we could understand that belonging and entitlement aren't the same thing, and a natural resource is not something that you can trade away as an entitlement, it's something that you can belong to. You're not entitled to use it and abuse it. Then it might be a place to start.
Okay. Thanks very much for your time. Thank you.